like to welcome you back to the show. So we have with us today a friend of mine by the name of Rene Dreifuss. And although we have had fighters on the channel before Rene is very unique because of his story and because of his journey. Before I ask Rene to say hi, I just want to mention that he's still in the game. He used to be a fighter, and he's going to tell you a little bit about that, but he still is in the game as far as he runs a gym, I guess we would call it, by the name Radical MMA. And how's it going?
Great. And it's really, I'm very happy to be here and to speak with you. Thank you for inviting me. Would love to explain my journey. And if somebody finds it interesting or even inspirational, fantastic.
Wonderful. Yeah, so basically, you were telling me that you've learned many different types of arts of fighting, but more than that, what I found interesting about you was that your journey, it's one of those journeys that like resembles a movie. Like every time you tell me something, I feel like I'm watching a part of a Van Damme movie or Steven Seagal, like you trained in Japan or something like that. Like how did this all come about? You created your own style of fighting. I mean, tell us about it.
Sure. Let me say, I did not create my own style of fighting, but I did the same thing Bruce Lee did. We took things that existed and we made it our own, which is what always Bruce Lee said. You sort of like, hey, you put your own personal spin. Like, so there's lots of rock and roll, but the Rolling Stones are not The Who, not Van Halen. Everybody has their own interpretation. So I didn't create the genre. I just sort of have my own way of doing things. So I started martial arts when I was a kid. As being bullied. I started in what was known as knockdown karate. It was very, very hard style of karate, not the kind of karate we see today. I was one of the only kids at the academy. I was getting bullied, and my dad was a doctor. One of his patients was like, "Oh, your son's getting bullied. You should try karate." So I'm like, "Cool." And we used to watch the kung fu movies on TV. There was this Channel 5 called Drive-In Movie.
Shokasugi.
Yeah, exactly right. Exactly.
We grew up on the same. We grew up on the same.
Right. And I'd be like trying to see how I could defend myself. And unfortunately, there was a anti-Semitic element to the bullying. Back then there was a lot of people. I mean, even today, my dad's Jewish, and unfortunately, it was a strong anti-Semitic element to that bullying. So I just wanted to defend myself.
You got on the subway. You weren't sure if you were getting off without a fight. Yeah, it was a different time. Now kids walk wherever they want. They have no clue what we went through.
That's true. And, some people as old guys back in my day, but this is a great change that, racism is just not as acceptable as it was back then.
Right.
So I started training hard, but then I had a very traumatic experience. A criminal attacked me when I was about 12 years old. And I don't want to get into it too much, but it was a very traumatic experience. And I realized that the training that I was doing would not work against someone much bigger. This person who attacked me was about 300 pounds. I was 12 years old. I couldn't do anything. And I was training hard as a kid. It wasn't like the kids' karate that we would take. I was training very hard. And I totally did not function because, force equals mass times acceleration. The bigger the mass, the bigger the force, right? I'm 12 years old. I'm fighting a 300-pound adult, and I just can't do anything. So I was always like, searching around for other things, started this martial art, that martial art. And my travels took me after graduating college to Japan. I started training a lot of different martial arts in Japan. And that's the same time where mixed martial art started getting really big. And back then it was like sort of human cockfighting was not sort of a thing. But in Japan, just like in Brazil, there was a very strong grassroots support of mixed martial arts. They've had a history of two styles fighting it out, or people mixing martial arts a lot in Japan.
This is pre-MMA, I guess.
Well,
this is before it became popular in America.
Right. It was called Vale Tudo, which means everything goes. So it was sort of like, we'll take away the rules, and this karate guy will fight this sumo guy, and we'll see what happens. But really, very quickly, people realize that if you're a karate guy and you don't know anything but karate, and if you're a sumo guy and you don't know anything but sumo, you're going to find some area of the fight where you're not going to know what to do. So instantly people are like, well, I'm a karate guy, but I'm also going to learn some judo. I'm also going to learn some boxing. I'm also going to learn some jujitsu, whatever. And you take different pieces and put them together in a unique way. And that was almost in the beginning, people realized that one style is not enough. You need to be a competent fighter. You're not one knife, one blade.
Absolutely.
Swiss Army knife. You take out this thing if you need this thing. You take out this thing if you need this thing. You take out this. For different situations, you need different things, right? And that's true of real street violence. There's going to be a situation where karate could work really well, and a bunch of situations where karate couldn't work at all. There's some situations where judo would work really, really well, and it wouldn't work at all. So the idea to be a competent fighter has always been about taking different things from different ranges of fight, different places. Are we fighting in a telephone booth? Are we like an elevator? Are we fighting way out in a street? Right. Are we fighting two guys? Are we fighting guys? Like, depending on the situation, the techniques you need to bring to bear are different. So you need to be a Swiss Army. And people understood this right away. And so I was in Japan training. Unfortunately, I had a car accident, got injured pretty badly, had to go home, but got a bunch of surgeries, tried to heal up. And right back in the beginning of mixed martial art, the Gracie family, which is the family of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, was doing extraordinarily well. So the idea was, hey, I would like to try to learn some of this Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And I walked into a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu academy in California, near where my sister lived, and started my Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu journey. And I'd already trained a lot of other martial arts before that. So it was just another thing. At that time, if you did Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, you were just generally interested in going further in mixed martial arts. But because my leg was bad, I was like, I'll just train. I don't know where I'm going to go with this. I enjoy training. I like testing myself. Let's see what can happen. But over time, with physical therapy and surgeries, my legs started to feel better. And I challenged myself, and I entered into some Vale Tudo competitions, which, as I said, is like MMA today, but with much less rules. You could grab the guy's hair, you could punch him in the groin, you could headbutt him. There was almost no rounds. There was, some fights had no rounds, some fights had 15-minute rounds. So there was
it's like a mixture of like Bloodsport meets Rambo or something.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't want to make it sound like, we were murdering each other, but it was
but it's pretty wild, man.
Yeah, a no rules or minimal rules scenario, and see what happens. And it was the same rules in the UFC in the beginning. They just over time made it more palatable for TV audiences. And also, like, if you have no time limit, eventually you can't do it on TV because a fight could last 3 hours. Nobody wants to watch 3 hours. People think they do, but they don't. They're like, this is getting boring. Right? The longest fight in history, pro prize fight in history, was Elio Gracie, and it's almost like 4 hours. This
people falling asleep.
Yeah, people falling asleep. Like, nobody wants to watch 4 hours. So rules had to be put in place, make it TV friendly. Things changed, but in my day, it wasn't like that. So I did my thing. I fought a number of times. I won most of them. I lost one. But then over time, I realized that my body, I would have trouble competing at a higher level because it just injured. So I just became kind of like a coach. I fell into coaching very by chance because I have a unique way of moving my body because I can't do things. My legs don't work right. Even today, even though I'm always doing physical therapy and working, like, I have significant injuries in my knees. So I developed this system called the rack guard, which is.
But what are your limitations? Do you walk around? You run around?
Yeah, I can walk, but I just certain ranges of motion, things I can't do. So my goal was, let me find something very, very efficient and easy to use that will be also very effective, efficient, effective, and easy for me. And because I'm also not a good athlete. Like, don't think that, just because I was doing martial arts as a kid, that I was like some natural, like you said, like Van Damme guy. No. I was the guy that it took 3 times longer to get the thing that everybody else got. But I'm stubborn. That's my superpower. I am stubborn as an ox. That's my wife says that, and she's right. So I refuse to give up. And
I told you when we spoke, I felt like you're a warrior. Like, you should have been born in the time of samurais or something, I don't know, 1,000 years ago. You should have been a barbarian or something.
Well, I appreciate that, but I'll tell you, thank you.
I don't know if it was a compliment.
Thank you. But I would say that, my goal is, one, to find efficiencies and more scientific approaches to human violence, and to outthink people than to out-warrior them. So if I can hack the system in a way to make everything much more effective and easier, why not? Why be a greater athlete when you can just press a button, hey, this thing works? So like any technology, whether it's phones or cars or I don't know, airplanes, software, everything we've seen in our lifetime, because you said you're 48, in our lifetime, we've seen incredible technological advancement. Well, guess what? Fighting is also technology. Right now, sometimes there's that element of athletics, but what I want to do is take that side that's not athletics and say, what can we do when you're a terrible athlete to make you very, very effective? And that's also what Elliot Gracie tried to do. So I'm just trying to continue that work in my humble, own small way. I'm nowhere near on the same level as those guys, absolutely not, but do my own little thing. And I'll tell you, the rack guard, the position I have to defend punches when they're back, it's very easy and very effective. And people can learn in about 30 seconds. And suddenly, if they're on the ground against one opponent, they can protect themselves and start launching some attacks. I have other things that I do and my fighters do that don't take a lot of training, but are very, very effective. And, you know, I would say that, like I said, I fell into coaching. But then as it grew, like it kind of snowballed, and then I opened up my own academy, and we've been very successful competing in mixed martial arts in our academy. And, you know, we've had some high level guys do very,
That's
very
awesome.
well. You know, we're a very small academy. We're not like this, you know, monster 300 person academy, very small, but
Right.
our
It
size,
seems like all the world-class guys come from the small academies. I used to train in Starrett City Boxing Gym. And then, you know, I'm sure you've heard of Gleason's, and back in the day, a lot of these fighting clubs seem to be very small, the ones that have the real champions coming out of them. You don't have really big clubs with guys coming out, unless I don't know about.
It's interesting. It's interesting because the boxing world and then the MMA world are different. So in the boxing world, I would say you're actually right. You have these small little boxing gyms with great coaches, and boxing is always taught one. But the thing is, mixed martial art involves a lot of different disciplines, right? It involves striking, punching, kicking, elbows, knees. Involves stand-up judo throws, wrestling throws, Greco-Roman throws, all this, the throwing repertoire of human grappling, and then grappling on the ground. Now, the issue with grappling is that you have to change your technique based on different body types. And those are very significant. The only way you get to do that is by wrestling lots of different body types, and you'll understand how to adjust. Now, of course, in boxing that exists too. You have some guys with long reach in this, but your coach can simulate that and also bring you around for sparring.
Right. That's interesting. I thought you were going in a different path. I thought you were going to say that you need a lot of different trainers, and in order to be able to afford a lot of different trainers, you need to have a sizable gym. What you're saying is a different point that I thought I saw where you were going with that.
No, you need a lot of training partners. You need a lot of bodies to work with. Fat guys, short guys, tall guys, guys that play one game, guys that play another game. Because like boxing is great, but it's only these two weapons, right and left. You know, thunder and lightning. That's it. And all the variations of the front punch and the back punch, right? Which is not that many. When you take mixed martial arts, you're dealing with all the strikes of boxing, all the kicks of all the kicking martial arts, the elbows, the knees, back in my day, headbutts, then the thousands upon thousands of possible throws and angles you have standing up. And then I probably know about 2,000 to 3,000 submission holds. Like, I don't even know how many. I don't know. There's just so many, because basically boxing happens in the plane, in a one plane. Like you're saying, I'm standing on me. MMA happens in a sphere, meaning you can be in any angle of human orientation. The geometry of combat is unlimited, because
a guy punched down, he's got to get up and keep fighting. A guy gets knocked down in MMA, he's got to fight from that position. All right, now what can I do? That's brilliant. I never thought of it like that. I mean, that's a very good way of.
Sorry, I apologize. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No. You're doing great. It's so interesting. You know, I have a friend whose daughter just got back from the. You got to go. I have a friend who just got back from the Israeli army. Sorry. And he was like, "Oh, she's trained so hard, she can take you." And I'm like, "I'll be honest with you, I don't care how hard she trains. I could still beat her butt. And it's interesting because this is the whole concept that you're hitting on, is that it doesn't matter what somebody learns. The bad guy or the aggressor may still be stronger than them unless they know how to get around that. And learning one discipline might not be the answer.
It's never the answer. It's never the answer. It's never, that is what mixed martial arts has proved. One discipline is not enough. Like reading one book doesn't make you knowledgeable. You have a library of knowledge that you draw from as an educated person. You don't go to school and just study chemistry. You study literature, history. This is having a plethora of interests and inputs is what makes you a complete martial artist. And if you are not a complete martial artist, you will always have some aspect of a weakness. Always. That's undeniable. And that is the truth that mixed martial art has always shown. And like you said, I don't care. Like, first of all, the idea that if you come out of the army, any army, and be prepared in a hand-to-hand fight without against a technical fight is absolutely ridiculous, because militaries don't train martial arts. Nobody's teaching people in the Ukraine, oh, we'll beat the Russians by boxing them to death. No, we're launching cruise missiles, we're shooting machine guns. Right. No military teaches in-depth hand-to-hand combat. That is ridiculous. So anybody says that, they're a moron. Okay, number one. Number two, like people who train like you, competitive and combative athletics are the honed edge of combat without weapons. Nobody can come close to that unless they're doing the same thing, right? You cannot be a professional boxer with the hands unless you're also trained in professional boxing or some type. You cannot be an Olympic level judoka at his game unless you actually train it. Now you can't
like you said,
be a mixed martial artist unless you're training this mixed martial arts.
Right. And that's why it was so brilliant when they came out with the Kumite in Bloodsport, and all of a sudden they're like, okay, let's see how this sizes up against that. And like you said, you know, you could be Bruce Lee, but if you're in a little what do you call it, telephone box with a sumo guy, you're done. And you could be a sumo guy, but if you have an open area, that guy can just wear you out. So it's interesting that you need to have all these different disciplines to round out in order to really win. And
the other thing is this. So we saw this weekend with there were two players. I won't say their names, but one was technically much cleaner in his technique, in his boxing, in his everything, technically much cleaner. But it doesn't matter. Technique does not matter if it's not combined with a proper strategy. So, for example, we have the Ukrainian Russian conflict. You have the Russian military, which has much more sizable resources than Ukrainians, and yet Ukrainians are doing very well because strategically they're using their assets much better.
So they're basically the Manny Pacquiao of armies.
Right, exactly.
Hit, move, hit, move, hit, move.
Exactly, and you would change your strategy depending on what your opponent is. He's a long-range guy, short-range guy, big guy. So, like you said, if you're fighting a sumo wrestler and you have a lot of space, of course your strategy would not be to engage, but to wear him out. Now, let's say you were dumb and you had an open space, but then you didn't wear him out. Well, you know, that wouldn't be a good strategy. So martial arts is not just about what you study, but what you do with those tools. So you could go to elite level university and then completely fail in the corporate world, right? I mean, or whatever your goal is, right? I don't know. You know, like just because you had this great achievement here doesn't mean it translates over there unless you put some thought into how you can effectively leverage that knowledge. So there's knowledge and then the application. Now, Bruce Lee said this, but he actually took the quote from the famous philosopher Goethe. It is not enough to know. One must apply. Meaning, you learn this thing here in the theoretical context. How are you going to actually effectively utilize it in a smart way? If you're not a smart thinker, you can't be a high-level combat athlete, right? Or you're going to lose to the guys who are just be better athletes. You know, so technique is not enough. What you study is not enough. at that moment, you have to have the experience, the training, and the knowledge to say, hey, this strategy is not working for me. I want to try this, right? Don't work hard.
It's almost like immature confidence. Like when you're a kid and you're watching all these superheroes in the movies, and then you think that's you because you can picture it, but you're not really applying it. It's almost like an immature perspective where you think because you know something, you have to know how to apply it. It's brilliantly simple, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
There's do you know the Onion, the newspaper that prints comic articles? You ever heard of it? So the Onion, it's like a satirical newspaper, right?
Okay.
So they have these joke articles that are very funny, but sometimes they really hit the nail on the nose. And one of their articles, the title was "Man overestimates his ability to fight by 3,000%," and that's actually very true. Like, you think that you're really good fighting until you actually fight. You're like, whoa, I really don't know what I'm doing. Like, I have so many students, big tough guys that come to my academy. Oh, I'm going to be your next champion. And then they fight one of my students, this little girl in pigtails, and she turns them into a human pretzel. And they're like, what does not compute? Well, because she's more tactical and more strategic.
Right. And they're also walking in like they're all tough. She doesn't have all that tough in her brain. That area is being used for intelligence. You remind me of a line from Daniel Negreanu, the professional poker player. He says, poker's like sex. Everybody thinks they're good at it. It doesn't mean you are just because you think you are. There's intelligence to everything. And I think it's fascinating. That was one of the things I noticed about you when we spoke on the phone, was that you have this ability to take fighting and kind of like appreciate God's world through it. Like, to you, it's like a miniature version of the world. If we were to take any topic that you and I speak about, either here or when we've spoken on the phone, and then just like stretch it and apply it to life, it's amazing how it's all applicable. You could talk about it like it's a kick, but then all of a sudden it's truly about just how you live your life, how you see things, how you apply actions. That's what I love about the way you looking at fighting through your eyes is it's almost a spiritual experience, to be honest with you.
I really appreciate that. I've had some really great mentors. One of my favorite mentors is this guy named John Rhodes, a pioneer in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and mixed martial arts and everything. He's an amazing guy. And he said his goal is to take the things he understands on the mat in the gym and use those same principles to leverage it for a better life. And that's exactly the point. Like, these lessons are kind of universal. Miyamoto Musashi said, Miyamoto's famous samurai, right? Said, once you understand the way in one thing, you understand the way in everything. What that means is there's some kind of universal principles of like efficiency that once we key into, we're like, it's kind of like hacking the system. When you understand, I don't have to work harder. I can just work smarter. If I do this, isn't that better? And
look at these monks. These monks are practicing fighting. Out of all the different things they could be doing with their life, these monks that live in solitude, they're using martial arts to gain higher wisdom. Like, literally, what else? That and meditation. I mean, I'm sure you know more on that subject than me, but it's the first thing that comes to mind. There has to be wisdom in it.
For sure.
Wow. Anyways, listen, I really appreciate it. I appreciate everything you shared, and I'm glad you stopped by. And this is not going to be the last you hear from me. I'm definitely going to call you, and I appreciate it, truly. Thanks for coming on.
No, thanks for having me, and it was a real pleasure sharing my perspective. And I really hope that people start to maybe watch mixed martial art and to see it for the chess game that it is, and to maybe be inspired. There's some incredible fights, particularly when you see the David versus Goliath matches, and you're like, wow, that little guy's going to get crushed. And then you see it, oh wait, he didn't. He really did amazing. How do you do it? Right? That's it's inspiring when you see things like that. So how they outthink people. brains overboard. That's it. Violence can be a very scary, intimidating thing when you don't understand. We always feel what we don't understand, but when we start to understand and unpack it and see it's the cogs and the wheels that are behind the curtain, suddenly it's like, oh, this is actually very interesting, and I can understand and hack the system. And then I can take these lessons that I learned here and maybe leverage them for a larger understanding of the world. And
Absolutely. Yeah. I don't think that this is even a fighting conversation. I think this is a conversation about life growth. I agree with you 100%.
Anyway, it was a true pleasure. Thank you for the invitation. And
Thank you.
anytime you want me back, just let me know.
Thank you. Oh, and I'm going to put your information in the description if ever anybody wants to check you out or check out your place or any of that. I'm going to get your info and stick it in the description. Thanks
Sure.
again.
No problem. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.